Alright YouTube, welcome back. Bobby from Buff here with part 4 of my Groot build tutorial. I'm going to go over some details of the hands and the vines. I made the gloves from cotton gardening gloves, $1 cotton gardening gloves, and I added silicone caulk, black silicone caulk to the gardening gloves, and then used a comb to comb through it. You could also use a disposable fork, would probably also work. Something with several prongs would be ideal. And you just sort of comb through the caulk and give it that texture. And then the tricky part is actually just waiting until it is dry to take it off. It took a little while, I would say close to an hour, before I could take the glove off. And then when it was finished, I painted it to give it that, to match the colors from the costume. The forearms were built using anti-fatigue mats from Ollie's Bargain Outlet. I buy rolls of it. As you can see here, I have a Stormtrooper costume, and I was thinking about the forearm of the Stormtrooper when I started working on this. You can see it's about 14 inches in what would be the diameter, and then the full length is 24 inches approximately, 23 inches approximately. You can vary this based on what you like. And again, I made static hands. They don't move, they don't flex. It's one part of the costume that I wish I had, could change. Maybe someday I will, but for now it does the trick, I like it. So here's a few looks at how I glued it. I used high temperature hot glue, those foam mats, drew it out onto the shape out onto the scrap. I had a piece that was big enough, and then I just started, I added the hot glue, and then I threw some tape on there to hold the pieces together while the hot glue was curing. Hot glue takes about 45 seconds to 1 minute before it is fully cured. And so the tape just helped keep it in place while it was doing that. Here you can see I just was checking out the scale and trying to figure out how I like the shape of it. And then when it was dry, before I actually hot glued it, I traced two halves onto the foam so they would be, exact opposites of one another. Here you can see inside I added a nice thick layer of glue just to hold that seam together from the inside. And then this photo shows one hand mostly finished and the other one basically just beginning. So here's how I worked on the vine technique. The details of the vines are they're made from foam pipe insulation. I had a few different sizes. I had different lengths, different thicknesses, and I trimmed almost every piece. I trimmed it quite a bit to get the right size. Groot in the movie, I felt like the vines that went down to his feet were the largest part of his body, the greatest thickness. And as you look at his build, as it goes up towards his head, it actually gets more and more narrow. The vines get smaller and smaller, similar to the way a tree would grow. So I tried to maintain this, and the vines at the very bottom of the costume and then towards the tips of the fingers are bigger, and then as it gets up closer to my neck, I actually trim them quite a bit to make them smaller and smaller. So these different photos show you how I'm going about this process. I was doing a bit of planning initially, and then as the build went on and I got better at it, I did less planning and more just progress. You'll get the hang of it as you go through this. Oh, sorry, that photo is sideways. But as you go through the process, you'll see more and more. You'll get a feel for what works, and you can make adjustments, on the fly without quite as much planning for each piece that you add. So there's a look at how my hand fits through. I still am able to use my hands somewhat. There's obviously a large thing covering my hand, but I'm able to hold things. For example, I hold flowers in my hand. In the movie Guardians of the Galaxy, Groot encounters a little girl. He bends down and he gives her a little flower. And I wanted to be able to do this when I was cosplaying, so I actually I ordered flowers from they ship from China, little replica, little fake artificial flowers. I think I pay around 4 cents a piece for them, and I just keep a handful with me usually. And when I encounter a little kid or someone in a particular situation, someone who's like comes up and hugs me and says, "I love Groot. Groot's my favorite." I'll hand out those little flowers. So continuing on here with the build, you can see I decided to add some rope. I just got the cheapest rope I could find, and I like that it was sort of raw and fraying, and that made it look more like a vine to me. So I just incorporated that into the build where I could, to just add some more details, make it look more like an organic creature as opposed to, foam pipes from from construction. The hot glue, I said, takes 45 seconds to 1 minute to dry, and those clamps come in incredibly useful. So if you don't have a set of those, you'll probably want to pick those up. I got mine from Harbor Freight Tools, and they're a few dollars and totally worth it, because it really frees up your hands to proceed to the next part of the progress of the project, while still allowing enough time for it to properly cure. Here's a look at the glove on with the gauntlet, or the hand. I didn't like that diamond plate inside, so I added some just 2mm craft foam, hot glued that in there, and then took the Dremel to it and sort of created like rings, like the inside of a tree. I thought that would be kind of a cool touch. There you see my hand, and then as I made progress, I would put this up together with the part of the costume that I had complete, and just sort of check my progress, see how it was working out. And again, I just, all of these parts here, I was just adding details and photographing as much of it as I could think of, so that later on I could make this video and just point out how I did it. Sometimes I burn my fingers while I'm using the hot glue, so I'll use the end of the scissors to hold the pieces in place so I don't get the glue on my fingers. And there's the other hand now, moving forward. Again, nylon webbing, as I expressed in my other videos, whenever I use nylon webbing, I try to burn the ends of it so that it doesn't fray. And I just made like little handles so that when my hand goes inside, I have something to grip and hold on to. When I'm doing events, the kids sometimes get a little carried away with the high fives, and if I don't have something strong to hold on to, they may actually try to rip that hand right off. Again, there's the other handle on the other hand, and then here's a look at both hands, pretty much the way that they ended up. Later on, you'll see I added a pouch to the inside of the left hand. That's where I store those little flowers for handing out to kids. That way I have them on me without having to put them in a pocket or something. And typically I troop, when I go out and wear this costume, I go with my friends with the Superhero Alliance of Western New York. My friend Kevin is Star-Lord, and Star-Lord is very familiar with my limitations as Groot. So he helps me out. He'll get me some more flowers and hand them to me when I'm ready. You see just more details about how I trimmed pieces to make them flexible and to make them fit together properly. This is a neck seal that I had made, this series of photos right here. I ended up not using the neck seal. I ended up incorporating as much of the build into the chest plate as possible, and the neck seal became sort of redundant. So I don't actually use a neck seal, but I did include these photos because I had some good details on how I trimmed the pieces, how I cut them, formed them together, and just the things that I did to make it look organic and tree-like. Here you see, I just used regular scissors to make all these trims to these pieces. you get the hang of it, and it goes pretty fast once you are moving along with your progress. And as I mentioned earlier, the thickness of each piece of foam varies tremendously. From the bottom of the feet, they're the largest, thickest pieces of foam, and then going up towards the neck, they get narrower and narrower, smaller and smaller, until right before where the head would be connected, they're very small, like that, very, very small. And again, this is artistic in nature, and you have to sort of just kind of go do what you think looks right, and look at reference photos, look at screen captures, and make your progress that way. That's my best advice, is to just keep looking back at the movie, and decide what you like about the movie, about the way that the character looks, and then try your best to recreate it, artistically. There's a look at how I incorporated some rope to make it look kind of more like a vine. And then these last few photos here, you'll see how I finally assembled the pieces for the hand. Later on in my video series, I'll have a video. I think I'm calling it finishing touches, and that the video of finishing touches will get a little more into the process of adding that little pouch and the flowers, the place where I store the flowers. Okay, well, thanks for watching. I hope this video is helpful as always, and please ask some questions if you have anything. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you soon.